I thought somebody had introduced me. So now I'll tell you how good I am myself. That's a lot easier. But so you know who I am. I've been in this business for about 43 years, most of it in sewage treatment and activated sludge. So in the last 10 years, I've concentrated on operations. We've been doing troubleshooting in plant. So all of this is really actual, applied, real-world experience that we're going to talk about today. It's not theoretical. These are the type of things that we either have discovered or confirmed in actual plant operation. So maybe we'll spend this morning trying to tell you all you want to know about activated sludge and we're afraid to ask, or maybe even more than you want to hear about the thing. I've passed out these pamphlets. I see Joe Bonick over there, and Tom Schwing and his brother Carl worked with me on a lot of this stuff here. And I sincerely believe this is excellent reference material. But there's a mistake that's made once in a while. People think that it's a do-it-yourself job. It isn't. Work with these pamphlets. You have examples of almost all facets of control that really permit you to get a good sludge and a good effluent, but you just can't read this and get down and start turning the valves. So I hope that in this lecture we'll point out some of the things in here, how they're used. I hope to excite your enthusiasm and your interest so that when you go back to your plant you can try your damnedest to get a good effluent. Then I hope somebody can ride circuit around here in the state of Maryland. I don't know if it should be the state or if it can be somebody in your association to visit you folks once in a while so that when you do find a stumbling block, somebody can carry you over the hump so you can get along with it. Don't be discouraged. I made a mistake about 5 years ago. We put on training courses. We were with operators for about a week, a full week's training course, not a half a day. And of course we thought we had told them everything. They went home shaking their heads like this, but when they got at the plant in about 6 weeks, some of the stuff made them shake their heads like this. Now that's all right. We all make mistakes, and that didn't bother me at all that people would get hung up on something. But some of these folks got discouraged and dumped it. That's bad. Don't become discouraged. Don't lose the faith. And try and bull your way through. I hope you'll have a knowledgeable circuit rider that can help you over the humps. Then you get this effluent, you say, ha-ha, it works, and you can keep on going like mad. That is the second phase of training that's very important. The third phase, I was just talking with Tom and his brother Carl down at a big plant. I don't know how many of you will have the opportunity to do this or to participate. But the real key then is if you have a big plant with somebody in there that really knows the business and also is a good trainer. Then he can have in-house, on-the-job training over a period of 6 months or a year. That's when you really learn. You turn the valves, you either achieve success or you fall flat on your tail and you do something about it. So, we'll be talking about some of these things where it's essential. I'll refer you to them. One is just observations. What do you look for and what does it mean? I think you'll find that in that manual of practice that was passed out also. They put some in. Control tests. Part 3, I wrote this long before I wrote the guts of it because we had to go on record on how you calculate these various parameters. Very simple, self-explanatory. Part 3B, how many ladies do we have in here? Do we have any ladies here?
Couple over here.
Couple over here. Gee, now I got to watch my language again. Son of a gun. Okay, I was going to tell you what I thought of Part B. I'll have to put it in more moderated terms. This was just one plain son of a gun to write. And I know, first of all, I say it's a son of a gun to read, and just go along with me and forgive me because it's a son of a gun to write. So that's Part 3, and really it involves step operation, or rather calculation procedures for your step flow plants. Very good process. And then later on we simplified that a little bit and we made it a little easier to work. Whoops, I got 2 calculation procedures. Then Early in the game, too, I put out an appendix long before I finished the articles to indicate some of the important details, how you run a 7-day moving average, what you should plot, and what you should do about it. And then, I don't know how many years ago this was, I had to give a paper on return sludge flow control. And it's gospel as far as it goes, but it doesn't go far enough. Return sludge flow control. I think I better tell you this so you can remember it. This really is only applicable for a fairly good sludge. You know, if you are about where you should be, it works like a charm. But supposing you have sludge that's settling like a rock, this doesn't tell you anything about it. Matter of fact, then if you follow this verbatim, you won't get the best of results. If you have a true bulking sludge, a true slow settling bulking sludge that just doesn't like to settle and these solids like to go out over the weir, this will hurt you rather than help you. So I tried to cover that story, and again, someplace along here you have 3 other handouts. One I call the October 76 summary. This one here. I hope on every one I put on preliminary to be edited, watch out, someday it's going to be changed, I think I want to change my mind and all this and that. I'm qualifying this all over the lot. But I felt an obligation to you folks and got this thing out so I at least could present the current status of our operational control procedures. This is current. It's got to be cleaned up for publication, but I think this is the one. I hope. Yes, because I'm going to refer to it later on. It carries this return sludge flow control 2 steps farther. It carries it into sludge quality evaluation. In other words, what is sludge quality? And then when you once have sludge quality, it tells you how to use this to control normal sludge, clumping sludge, bulking sludge. Remember, this thing doesn't go far enough. Get into here for return sludge flow control. And I also have a section then, just the introduction to wasting control. Going along with that, again, maybe 5 years ago, I found I was in trouble with bulking sludges, and I had to determine how to calculate the optimum controls for a bulking sludge. I've used that for about 5 years. I've hesitated writing about it. It's all in here. It's a companion to return sludge flow control. We'll talk about this a little bit. Then here's the kicker. Just Friday, I figured, well, here's a nice bunch of guys in the state of Maryland. They might be interested and they might not. This is called dynamic sludge age, DSA. Really, it's written only for the folks today. You know, for a while I knew you could compute sludge age about 4 different ways. You all know that. Matter of fact, in this bulletin here, I compute sludge age. I call it AGE. It's a little different and only a little bit better than MCRT. And that didn't bother me, so you use that sludge age calculation or this sludge age calculation or another one. If you get a number and put it in your hip pocket and use it a little bit. But if you recall, recently we're getting a lot of papers out how to control. And one, they say, control strategies. Here's my strategy. What is your strategy? And the guy says, I have a mixed liquor concentration control strategy. That means if I hold my mixed liquor at 2,465, I'm in business. The answer to that is no good. Okay. But then carrying it 1 step farther, as I said, mean cell residence time gives you a pretty lousy number. It didn't bother me until so many people now say, oh, my strategy, I operated by the mean cell residence time concept. Just plain horse feathers. So I have developed something that is much more useful, much more realistic than mean cell residence time. And it should be used, but not as a strategy. It's not a strategy all by itself. That's in here. I think you'll find, if you're a disciple of MCRT, you'll find this both irritating to you and then finally useful after you put it into practice. I think that indicates what I wanted to do. Okay, what did I say to myself here? Okay, I'm trying to follow the outline that I understand you folks would like to have me follow and discuss the subjects that I understand are interesting to you. As please, if something comes in that doesn't ring loud and clear, up with a hand, stop me, question me, refute me, but don't abuse me and let's all be friends. But take the opportunity to stop this thing any place to be sure that you understand what I say. Or if you think I'm wrong, that you tell me I'm wrong so we can clear it up. Or if you have an experience that so strongly justifies this or so strongly countermands it, get up and say, hey Al, how about this? We'll try and make it informal. We don't have the time to take this into the formal workshop type series. You can't do that in one half of a day. But this is your program. We'll try our best up here. You make the best of it. You drag everything out that you want to know. If I know the answers, I'll pass them on. If I don't, I won't even say I'll go find them for you. I'll just tell you I don't, and you can find them yourself. So, introduction, types of plants. Okay, there's three things I want to talk about. Putting the book down, I'll tell you what's going to happen here. I face the same trap that I do in every time I'm up on a podium. I think you'll go along with me. I think we'll have a mixture here of mostly operators, maybe some engineers, some very skilled operators that know all this. Well, none of us know everything, but they know quite a lot. And I won't apologize. I just say I recognize that you're going to say, why the heck is Al wasting all his time on that? I can't help it. Then we're going to have another element that have only been in the plants a short time, and that's why we have to give some background. And when we get into things, they're not really complex, but they're a little bit more than the first stage of operational control. I may go over your head. I can't help it. We'll go down the line, we'll take an orderly procedure, and hope by the end of this, we come in the plant, we look at this, we test that, we draw our trend charts, we evaluate that, we calculate a few things and say, how simple it is. I turn this valve, and that valve, and then you hope that you're going to have a good sludge. And usually you will. Here we go again. I'm always emphasizing the last before the first. Everything I'm talking about, 40 years of experience, the concept is all operational control, judgment, and practice should be to develop an optimum sludge. The heck with the effluent. I wish I could put blinkers on myself whenever I go past the final clarifier. The only time, some of the times I've really crossed myself up was somebody's coming in here, gee, that effluent doesn't look good, why don't I do something? I did. It got worse. If you produce an optimum sludge, the odds are, nothing is perfect, but the odds are almost all the time you'll get an excellent effluent. So we're talking about sludge. Always sludge, 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 sludge. Then you'll notice that I'll do a lot of talking. You see, I said almost always when we say this is, if I ever say this is exactly, I don't mean this is exactly, I mean it's about right, about. And when I say you're going for this number, you'll never make it. You're always trying to approach this. Can you get that in concept? If I make any real over-it statements that are positive, I don't mean it. I mean that you go as close to as you can. You approximate. You do about this. Because no matter what you do, just like quicksilver, the plant will shift and it'll move someplace else. So you'll be chasing it all around the block. And if you get close to it, you're in business. Now we'll get into this. Let's talk about what I'm going to talk about. I'm only going to talk about activated sludge. I'm only going to talk about 3 modes. Now we know there are, within the 3 modes of operation, there are dozens of sub-modes that you can use. We'll stick to the 3. very simply, activated sludge, aeration, something that looks like a clarifier, and effluent goes out here, and influent goes in here. We got sludge coming over here. We got a pump that looks like that. He's pumping that way. We got another pump that looks like that. He's pumping that way. So we get into this pump and into this pump. And we'll take this one over. We'll call this excess flow, excess waste sludge. Here we're going to bring in our return sludge. We're going to go right through this plant like this, out here, return sludge, waste sludge, and out we go. Oh, thank you. That's much better. Gee. Okay, plug flow. Then let's go to the next thing. Since plug flow, quite a few people have put in contact stabilization. We'll just put in the classic types, not some of the refinements. Again, from now on in, do you mind? I'll forget about this wasting. I won't plug that in. It just confuses. We waste sludge or we don't waste sludge. So we get some sludge coming back here. We put it in this compartment. But the classic contact stabe has one divider about sludge alone in two-thirds of the whole aeration area, and influent flow in 1/3. Now, we'll call this contact stabe. As you so well know, people have been putting this in and saying, well, it's a more efficient type of a plant. I don't know if it is or not. But this you can put in your pipe and smoke. If everything else is done properly, plug flow of this type, especially plug flow complete mix, will give you the best effluent if you got good sludge. Fine for effluent. Contact stabilization is excellent for working on sludge quality. That's the whole difference right there. So let's carry it one step farther. I hope this doesn't become too elementary for you, but it's a lead into something else. Here we had what we thought was contact stabe. So let's put in another curtain wall over here. Again, we'll have our clarifier with our return sludge. Well, always coming into here. We'll call it, what do we call this? I usually call this flow. It's good enough, FLO, FLO, and FLO. And then we're going to come around here, but in this time we're going to divide it up so we can put our flow in here with a valve, of course. Wrong already, huh? Now I got to mess up that pretty clean blackboard. This is old hat to many of you, but we got to get it down with an opportunity to go out here and maybe put it in this bay, or maybe put it in this bay. Step flow. Step flow, you can do plug. You can put everything in here as plug flow. Beautiful. When you got a good sludge, good everything, go plug. You got a dandy effluent. All right, we're going to discuss this more. Suppose you got a bulking sludge. Bang! Get all of your sewage flow down in here. Work on the sludge. As you're recovering, or as you're getting worse, come in between. Maybe put a third, and then maybe all here and here, and then walk yourself backwards. I'll tell you frankly, I think I've operated at least 2 dozen or 3 dozen plug flow plants and maybe 6 to a dozen contact stabilization. But the funny part of it is, which is best and which is wrong? Every time, see, up until just about 2 years ago, when now we're only doing training. We're not doing troubleshooting. So in picking a training plant, we usually try and pick something that's good for training, and it might be a pretty good plant. Just imagine what happens when I was troubleshooting. The only place I got called in is when nobody else could make the darn thing work. So for 10 years, I didn't know there was anything like a good plant. And in those cases, I spent half my time, say if we had a contact stabilization tank that would have another pipe in here, half of the time the guy was running contact stabilization, and I'd have to get into plug flow first. The other half, the guy was running plug flow, and I had to put it in contact stabilization. So those are the 3 forms we're going to talk about, and for goodness sakes, I'll bet that if we had a show of hands here, the vast majority would say, and I know I believe firmly, based on experience, if we're going to design what's supposed to be an activated sludge plant, something that's conventional, and although I haven't done it, I'd say the same thing for pure oxygen also. If I were going to have to design anything that's called a conventional activated sludge plant, I would put in step feed. No matter what trouble you're in, you can play this darn thing like a pipe organ. You know, those of you guys that play a pipe organ, you have the right hand for the melody, left hand for the chords, then you get your feet, and then for expression you move your tail, you know. Well, really, this will permit you to do almost anything you want if you know how to handle it, and that's what we tried to put in that Part 3B. Very good. We'll come to that, but I'll answer your question very simply. If you got a good sludge, and we're going to talk about sludge quality, how you identify it, if it settles and concentrates right, usually you want to stay in plug flow. It's a good sludge. It can do a dandy job. You might just as well give the sewage the longest possible contact time with that sludge. If you have a sludge that's bulking, that's really your next stage. If it's bulking sludge, I'm getting ahead of myself, is almost always new sludge. Bulking usually, 75% of the time, is caused by operation, not by load and not by design. Those of us who have bulking sludge have usually brought it upon ourselves. There are times when you get a crazy load that you can't handle, it will create bulking. There are times when the plant is just too darn small. But usually, hell, of all the bulky sludges plants we've cured, all you had to do is operate them right, and away they came, back they came, and gave a good sludge. So when you have a bulky sludge, it's a young sludge, it's not oxidized enough. So you see what I'm driving at? You want to induce the full oxidation pressure, whatever you want to call it, to that sludge. You say, the heck with the effluent right now. I want to work on sludge. And in one way of doing that, and think in terms of per cycle, if you have, say you have 50% return sludge flow, 50% return sludge flow. If you're up here, you have a certain aerator detention time. We'll call this ADT, aeration detention time. And both the sewage and the sludge stay in there that same amount of time. Your mixed liquor will be higher here than it will be here. So all told, you get greater aeration detention time, and you get a greater, who do you want to use? ADT times ATC, or Eckenfelder's concentration times time. Anyways, you get the best possible world for a good sludge. Now let's go down here. Only 50% of that, wait, no, what I'm all right, going through here you have 100% of flow plus 50%. You got about 150% of raw flow going through here. But if you only dump return into here, you really only have 50% in here. Comparing this here, the detention time of this sludge in here is 3 times as long as that detention time over there. Conversely, though, your waste detention time is only 1/3 as long. So you could sag on the treatment for a while, but you don't sag as much as you gain. So in this one, contact stabilization, you will have, well, how will we say that? Aerator sludge detention time. ASDT, aerator sludge detention time. I don't care if you remember these symbols. After a while, they become such good friends. You talk about them. You can plug them into formulas. It's better than saying theta, omega, pi, phi, pho, phi, fum. You know, what the heck do they mean? But this ASDT always means aerator sludge detention time will be great. But aerator waste detention time will be reduced. See what you've done over here? If you go into here, you aggrandize the pressure on the sludge, you reduce it on here. And if you do this in step flow, then when you get a better sludge over here, you start walking back again. You do this with a bulking. You go to this or to this with a bulking sludge. Another, getting ahead of my story, another nice thing is if you're subject to a severe infiltration during rainstorms with flows that go up 300% or so, this is a grand way to save your sludge instead of having it blow out of the final clarifier and into the river. Because the moment you transfer from a plug flow position, where you might have a mixed liquor concentration of, say, 2,500, if you blow this through, you're going to lose, during the peak of the flow, you're going to lose a third of your sludge. Conversely, if you switch over, throw all your sludge into here or into here, all your waste into here or to here, this will pile up with sludge. Instead of having, what did I say, 2,500, you don't have to remember all these figures, it's all in there someplace, you know. This concentration will go up to at least 5,000 or 6,000 ppm. See, 2,500, 6,000. Look, you've taken all this sludge and put it in here. This concentration then, because you only have a certain sludge inventory, if you put most of it in one tank, you can't have so much in the other tank. This might get down, instead of 2,500, it might get down to 1,200. Two things have happened. You've saved your sludge, and as we come into it later, all things being equal, a thin sludge always settles faster than a thick sludge. All right. So you got a storm. You've increased your flow. In doing this, you've saved the sludge, you've made it thinner, it settles faster, so you might even be able to settle it against a 2-to-1 overload. Did that answer your question? Did it? Okay, here. I don't want to be guilty of this. I did this to one group once before, and I asked the question, and the guy said, yes, Mr. West, but all I really wanted was a yes or no answer. So we'll try not to get in that trap. Any other questions about this as far as we've gone? Good. We'll get on with some of this stuff. I'm just going to show you one slide as a little background. Now, let's show you what surfaced about 40 years ago. 40 years ago we knew this. Let's just visualize one more concept when you get out to your plant, so you can say to yourself, this is this kind of a plant. This design has forced me to operate something like this. Are you with me? One kind of a plant will operate something like this, but then you still have to control the other with the other way. Now, which did I have up here first? Let's take this one. Let's just think, those of you who might have operated some of the old plants, and I understand there are some old ones, I think my red letter said early design. We're talking about a tank ratio. I'm talking about tank ratio, 4-to-1, 2-to-1. In other words, how many, the aerator is so many times bigger than the clarifier. A tank ratio of 4, you don't have to put these numbers down, but a tank ratio of 4 means the aerator is 4 times as big as the clarifier. Here's a tank ratio of 1.5. That means this is 1.5 times as big as that. I'm not talking about, is the clarifier big enough? Is the aerator big enough? I'm just talking about the relative size of the two tanks. In the olden days, when I was a youngster, we had big aerators and small clarifiers, and that set the operation. within limits. Usually we were operating at about an aeration detention time of about 10 hours at flow alone, about 8 hours at flow plus return sludge flow. This was standard. And now, because of that, this tank always demanded a relatively low mixed liquor, ATC, aeration tank concentration, of about 2,000 ppm, about. Now, because we had 2,000 ppm mixed liquor instead of something else, that meant the clarifiers could operate at overflow rates, OFR, 900 to 1,000 gallons per square foot per day. It also meant that because you had a thin sludge with a big overflow rate and a big tank, you could operate with a lower return sludge flow percentage. You'll all remember this. I mean, just historically, these plants used to be operated at 25% return. So you see, big aerator, big clarifier, you say to yourself, I don't need so much mixed liquor. I don't need as big a return sludge concentration. I can get by with a smaller clarifier. And remember, you only put this in your hip pocket, and remember this. It clues you in. So if your control tests tell you to do something differently, your antenna will go up, and you'll say, hey, I better calculate this again. Now, conversely, though, at the present day, well, I just sketched this one out, a tank ratio of 1.5, a present-day plant. Matter of fact, some of them are being designed with the aeration tanks as large as the clarifier. Look what that did to us because of that. Here, the aeration detention time might be about 6 hours at flow alone, and down to 3.4 hours, about 3 hours on flow plus return. Heck, I've operated them down to 2 hours. I sure as heck wouldn't design for them, but if you know the business, you can operate that way. And it says, I must have a high mixed liquor, maybe 5,000. That's a good number. 5,000. Here we had 2,000. Remember, this little bitty aerator demands high mixed liquor concentrations. And when you once get over here, remember that 5,000 ppm mixed liquor can't settle near as fast as a 2,000 of equal quality, so you have to have a bigger clarifier. Maybe something like 600 gallons per square foot per day. Maybe 500 gallons per square foot per day. And because you have a thick sludge that settles slowly with a big blanket and a clarifier, you have to really return some sludge, maybe about 75%. Now, that's an almost infallible clue that you will have when you look at your plants. You say, at big aerators, I have to operate this way. Small aerators, I have to operate that way. And away you go, and you make your observations, your control tests, and set your valves, and you'll have this hip pocket confirmation to see whether you're right or whether you're wrong. The object of the game is to get good sludge quality, and you do that by control. Remember, we've agreed, because you didn't answer me, you didn't question me, you didn't argue with me, so see now I know we've all agreed that the SSV and SSC curve, that's settled sludge volume, settled sludge concentration, define sludge quantity. You have to check that out first and see what it means. All right, Tom or you other fellows who've been involved with this can tell you all the reasons why you should be using a big, fat settleometer instead of a narrow, skinny little 1,000 cc cylinder. All I can say is this is better. It won't make any difference with a fast settling sludge, but when you get a bulky sludge, the results you get from this kind of a cylinder can be 100% different than the results you get from a 1,000 cc cylinder, and this is better. Put your pipe in both. So, pardon? Right, good. Somebody said it right. Later on, you guys might get a little more enthused and start screaming at me, and then we'll have a lot of fun. So, the standard settleometer, use a big fat settleometer. Let's see, I've noticed the only place in the world you can buy these, the rascals that are out in this part of the country, They're gougers. They make a good settleometer. I think this darn little thing will cost you about $35. Just absolutely horrendous. Other people are starting to make them now too. But supposing you're in a real little bitty plant. I don't think any good sized plant, 35, if that thing cost $100, it'd be cheap because you'd be used to control. Let's say you're in a little plant, you have no budget at all. Get yourself a gross graduate, 2-liter beaker, and graduate it up to 1,000 and use it. You lose a little bit on accuracy, but that grossly graduated 2-liter beaker will still be one heck of a lot better than your accurate 1,000 cc cylinder. Okay, use this. And then forget what you've read in some of the books. Now from now on, we're really going to have fun. I expect a few brickbats to come down here, but I just can't help but speaking my mind. If you'd like to take SBI and put it in that historical column over there, SBI, like Ben Franklin's stove and all these things which are useful in the past, and don't tell you enough about the business anymore. Forget it. So, you want to run a settling test, you want to measure it at 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, at 5 minutes intervals for an hour, and then at 10 minutes, then at 20, 30 pounds, 40, 50, and 60. Now here's the key. If you have a normal sludge, or a fast settling sludge, that's as far as you have to go. If you have a slow settling sludge, as we'll show you later on, keep on reading the settleometer once an hour until it quits settling. Let's call it ultimate compaction. Don't quit, because you're going to use that for control. Normally, you let it set up, it'll almost be settled in an hour. You might want a 90-minute reading. I'm sure it'll be compacted to ultimate then. And you take a 2-hour reading for confirmation with a bulking sludge. You set your timer and come back in about an hour later. I'm not talking about hanging around and looking at that settleometer all the time, but get back there and see what's happening. Use the fixed settleometer and carry it out. Then plug the stuff into a centrifuge because it's much more convenient than doing wet chemistry. And as a matter of fact, people have told me, well, Al, the centrifuge won't agree with the information we get off the balance. So I tell them in all kindness, okay, I know they don't agree at times. At times the ratio between the two is a very good control subject. And furthermore, if they don't agree, isn't that great? Because this is right, your balance doesn't tell you half as much about sludge as the centrifuge does. First that number. I just need a new slide. I think you'll find the past bulletin I gave you on return sludge flow control shows a normal sludge. Are you all with this? This is nothing more than, here's your settleometer, 2, 4, 6, 8. This is the settling rate over some period of time. I've carried them out for 4 hours. There's not, you'd have that concept, haven't you? No question. In other words, this normal sludge, in 5 minutes it settled down to about 750. In a half an hour it settled down to about, almost 400, and so forth and so forth. You're just plotting your settleometer data. Here's a normal sludge settling like this. You notice it's almost stopped settling at an hour. It had stopped at an hour and a half. And from here on in, if it doesn't rise to the surface, it'll stay straight. That's a normal sludge. And then, if you run the RSC, return sludge concentration, it's all in here. Well, it's almost like an SBI. You know, it's 1,000 times the ATC over the settled body. In other words, supposing this sludge had an ATC, aerator tank concentration by centrifuge, of, let's say 4. That'd be something equivalent to 4,000 ppm. Let's say it had 4. To 500 cc per liter. Just visualize, it's settled to half, so it must be double concentration, right? So you take your 4 times 1,000 is 4,000 divided by 500, and you should come up with 8. See? So that's all it is. This is the concentration of that residual sludge. And you can see a normal sludge, so this one here happened to have been a 4 ATC, or ATC, or measured in the centrifuge for, and it concentrated like this up to something around 15 or 16. This is the measured value. This is just taking the mixed the mixed liquor times 1,000, dividing it by these values. But then, anything that concentrates in this range is usually a pretty good sludge. Incidentally, not this, but this. That's the sludge quality indicator. Now look at this rapidly settling sludge. Here, it's concentrated all the way up to almost 25 in a half an hour. You've all seen that. Is that a good sludge? It's safe. If you don't know the business, you'll sleep real good at night because you'll never run into sludge bulking. But usually you'll never get a good effort either. Settling too fast is just like rocks falling through a turbid media. And usually you leave hidden flock and straggler flock and some turbidity behind. If you have this kind of a sludge, it can always be improved. It may be satisfactory, but it can always be improved by squeezing it down so it settles and concentrates normally. Slow settling, look, that only went up to SSC 5, 10, 12. But in 1 hour, look at that. It settled from 5 to only about 7 in 1 hour. What is that? That's a bulking sludge that's going to be blown right out of the clarifier. That's the guy you have to control. He's the most difficult of the lot. But there again, you see, this identifies it, and you don't have to have any greater identification. Normal, rapid, or slow, and you can put down the numbers. You say, put the hour number down, SSC of 5, 10, 15, 20. That gives you a numerical index about how good your sludge is. The early curve. Here we set up, what was that? Some sludge at Wilmington, Ohio. We took the sludge, we used 3 settleometers. We put one settleometer contained 100% sludge. The other settleometer contained 80% sludge plus 20% of final effluent, so the same kind of water. You don't use cold tap water. The other one contained 60% mixed liquor sludge and 40%. Now, first of all, look, that confirms the statement I made before. Now, this is equal sludge quality. You don't have to have a formula, but you did. I took the same sludge and I diluted it. What happened? Look how the thinner the sludge, of equal quality, the faster it will settle. See, that pretty much confirms this use of step control, so you can make sludge settle faster immediately without changing quality. But when you take these diluted mixed liquor concentrations and divided by these settling things, lo and behold, this is such an important line. Look what happened. No matter where they started out, they all concentrated the same. They said, listen, Buster, Al West, if you think this line defines sludge quality, I'll prove it to you, because no matter how thick or how thin I am, I'm always going to fall on the same line if I'm that quality. SSC determines sludge quality, or identifies sludge quality. See, no matter what you had, it says, heck, I am the same kind of sludge. Observations, this is a much better time to quit, because we're going to something. Wait, before we quit, a lights on if somebody will. Any questions so far? We can turn this off. Any questions so far? Yes, sir, a question coming up.
Yeah.
When you have real bulking, you do what?
The operators is turning the waste pump from waste to the thickness, which I don't think that's right.
I'll get to that, because you're right, he's wrong. Okay, but I wouldn't be so short if we were going to cover sludge bulking. Other question. Yes?
What is the source of the settleometer? And where can I buy it?
Oh, it's right here. And as you see, I'm not really trying to promote this company because I'm mad at them. But right now in the appendix, in the appendix on page 22, it says, no, how about page 20? It says, Mallory direct reading settleometer can be purchased from Scientific Glass Apparatus Company in Broad Street, New Jersey. Stare. Yes?
Give me a brief, quick reason for why a settleometer is better than your 1,000 millimeter.
All right, yes. For 2 basic reasons. Just visualize this settleometer getting smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller, even though it's glass. just the plain friction alone of the glass. It just can't drop down. I hope I have another slide of that. Let's say you have a slow settling sludge. If it goes down, say, to a 750 mark in the cylinder, it will have gone down to at least 500 in the big glass. It settles faster. Second, if you have a big, wide settleometer, it is really concentrating. It's not dropping. It's not creating many countercurrents. But in a little skinny one like this, for all the concentration, you've got to squeeze out water, and that gives you a countercurrent velocity currents that will hold that up. That's why. You.
Well, I was just wondering.
Right, you.
Changes in plant operations by adding chemicals in the activated sludge.
Yes?
Have you reviewed a lot of those in the changes, the increased density of the sludges?
Have I reviewed what?
The characteristics of sludge changes.
Oh, we've used chemicals. I don't know what you mean. I'll tell you what. We always try and change sludge quality, get good sludge, do the job by control alone. Create an environment that's proper by control. You'll get a good sludge, you'll get a perfect effluent most of the time. See that most of the time? Then if you can't do that, then use chemicals.
Okay, we're on a curve that's actually steeper than that rapid settling curve.
Yes?
Because we have to add chemicals to remove phosphorus.
You have to add.
Right.
Oh, to remove phosphorus. Okay, where do you add them? At the primary or the
We're
air?
adding it in between the array. You studied that.
I haven't studied it. I've worked with it. But first of all, I'd always, I mean, if given the choice, I would try adding, for phosphorus control, I would try adding my chemicals in the primary, not get that real tight, that immediate bang on the sludge. We've had to use I tell you how easy it is to control bulking. Don't believe me, you know. All you guys, did you see the movie Oh God? Anybody? Well, think of it like this. No, there isn't this kind of an analogy, but I got the biggest kick out of God said, well, you know, you don't really believe everything in the Bible just the way it's written. He said, you know, it says I created the world in 7 days. He said, really? He said, I goofed the first 6 and then had to do it all on the 7th. Well, some of that applies here, you know. Did I lose my point? Nobody even laughed. I thought that was funny.
We're a high-rate plant, so we have to add the chemical to control suspended solids in the
Yeah.
plus phosphorus. So I have no choice.
It's pretty hard. We've done that. Matter of fact, we did that with some corn waste where we couldn't control by operational control. We used ferric sulfide and we used polymers. And we found that if we added too much, it would settle like a rock and we'd lose control and it'd bounce up. And by bench scale and by just a glass test out at the clarifier, we could balance up pretty much and got a pretty decent sludge. But it is altogether a different beast from there on in. I mean, it wasn't following operational control pressures, as we say, which you still do to the best you can, but it's really now being overwhelmed by the chemicals you put in. I can't answer any better than that. If I were in your situation, like I've been in it myself, I just keep on. First of all, I might try 3 different chemicals, and when I decide upon the one I want, I try and learn how to use it. First, I try and operate. If I can't, I got to use chemicals. So I can't go any farther. We're going to talk about observations. You've got to look at that darn plant. You're going to run some control tests. Remember, I said control tests, not monitoring tests. Control are the ones we're going to talk about. What do you use to control the plant? I'm not talking about other essential tests. POD, suspended solids, all this and that, which serve a different purpose, but they don't help you control the plant. And then what we're going to do is we're going to show you what to do with the data and how to evaluate what's needed, calculate a few things, turn the valves, and get an effluent. Here we go. Remember this. This is very important. On a long-term basis, this is proof positive that your sludge is too young. A bulky sludge, you must reduce wastage. But you might not be able to do it today. See, the other one you can start wasting right away. But here, if you got this condition and a slow settling sludge, if you quit wasting on day 1, all you'll do is blow everything out of the clarifier. So you might have to dump a little bit and then reduce your wastage. This means it's too young, get some old sludge, but watch your control test so you do what you have to do today first, which may be the opposite of what you have to do on a long-term basis. We're always checking the control test. Here's the other side of the coin. Now let's, there we go. That's what it says. Billowing white sludge is too young. Scummy dark sludge is too old. And of course you know this if it's black. It works. Now I got to calm down and be slow. I hope I don't blast your ears off now. But anyway, here we go. If it's black and septic, you know you have to pour the air. And you might have to do it for sure. Final clarifier. For goodness sakes, look at your depth of blanket, see what's happening. And we're going to talk about solids washout, hydraulics, bulking, young, and ashing or clumping old. Quite frequently, people see any of these things and they say, my sludge is bulking. Usually, half the time it's not bulking. Read the sludge blanket. That's so important. Find out what that sludge blanket is doing you day by day. It'll indicate if you're controlling properly or what else you have to do. Here's the kind of head we used to make. Just a sight glass here, screwed into this pipe, look down through here, a light over here, and away you go. I'm not going to take what you want. This is the kind you can buy in Cincinnati. I forget who sells it, but this is a purchased one. You just buy the head, put your pipe on, and away you go, and you can see where your sludge blanket is located. Here's Charlie Bardner. This is how not to read a sludge blanket. Okay, now, what can you tell from the appearance of the final clarifier? When you see something like this, I wish we had workshops so we could have discussion. We run out of time. This says, this clarifier is saying to the operator, listen, Buster, just leave me alone. Let me do my thing. I don't give a damn what Eckenfeller said, Weston said, West said, or anybody said. I'm doing great. I've proven it to you. Leave me alone. And that's exactly what you do until your sludge blanket starts coming up, and then you have to learn to do something else. That says, great, I love this. BODs of about 5, solids of 5. Leave me alone, and I'll go to work for you. Here's ashing. This is usually the indication of an old sludge. That, coupled with that scummy foam on the aerator, says increase your wasting. No question about it. Here, clumping, when it gets this bad, and I've seen this, matter of fact, I've produced this, you lose an awful lot of sleep when you see it get from that condition to this condition, and then 10 times as bad as this with all your sludge rising up and going out of the clarifiers. It's not conducive to good dreams. All you get is nightmares. Sludge bulking. Let's talk about classic bulking, solids, washouts, and straggler flock. Here's classic bulking. We're going to talk about how to control that. That stuff isn't settling. And I don't care if it's got spherotilus or if it doesn't have spherotilus. It doesn't make any difference to the sludge. You have created an environment that is going to give you a slow settling sludge. If you keep going too far, the spherotilus will like it. They'll grow like mad. Finally, you have mats and you're in real trouble. But the object of the game is not to kill spherotilus. It's to make that sludge settle. You make the sludge settle by giving it a proper environment. Same thing goes for actinomyces nocardia. You know, they say, well, oh, that scummy foam. And some guy, and it was a biologist, he found nocardia, actinomyces in the foam. He said, I solved all the problems. All we have to do now is know how to kill all the nocardia in the foam and I get a perfect plant. You know the answer to that. You create that condition, nocardia love it and they grow in it. I just have to, I bumped into that in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And again, my good friend Larry Ernst, he said, gee, we're having trouble. And we got about 3 biologists from 4 universities. How you divide 3 and 4, I don't know. But he said, they told us all we had to do is kill off the nocardia. I said, well, Larry, why don't we just waste a little sludge? So he called me back a couple of weeks later. He said, Al, he said, it worked. He said, no more nocardia. I said, I don't care if you don't have any bluebirds. How about the scum and the effluent? He said, no scum, perfect effluent. So don't be sure you associate cause with effect. It shows that if you're lucky with a bulking sludge, and somebody said they get the best results with a bulky sludge, and they're right. And here is a place where the sludge came up within 6 inches of the clarifier with low flows, perfect effluent. But boy, if he added another drop of sewage to that place, he'd be in real bad trouble. Here's something that was called sludge bulking. This was Denver, by the way. It wasn't any more bulking than the man in the moon. Look at this flock. It was a perfect sludge. perfect sludge. You could tell it in the settleometer, everything else. SSC of about 15, and just beautiful. And I hope we have time for that. It was a big plant with multiple clarifiers. You know what happens? They depended upon hydraulic similitude. You know, you put a pipe like this and you put 4 spokes off it, and you say, everything's going to be perfect. The sewage is going to go 1/4 here, 1/4 there, 1/4 there, 1/4 there. And you know it never does. So in this case, this plant, these were 3 clarifiers. This one was blowing over like mad. Another clarifier, the sludge blanket, was down about 6 feet from the surface, and the other about 4 feet from the surface. These other 2 producing a perfect effluent. Had they been able to balance that up, they'd have had a perfect effluent, perfect sludge. It's not bulking, it's solids wash out because, and this isn't because of operator foolishness, it's just because he didn't have the means of dividing his flows to the various tanks. Here, again, straggler flock. It's usually, when you get this straggler flock, that's not bulking as such. See, there's no sludge coming up over here. It's sometimes because of high overflow rates, most times because of poor clarifier design. And it's usually in a transition stage between a bulking sludge and a better sludge. So if you're getting out of bulking, just keep on going right through this stage until you get a good sludge again. Process control test. Now let's see what we're going to do to test. And of course, you have to have a process laboratory. And look, this is all you need to run an activated sludge plant. To run it, you have to have a heck of a lot more to analyze, to report to the state, to give information to your design engineers so they can do a good job on the next thing. This is not to belittle the other essential tests, but for goodness sakes, don't overlook these simple tests which tell you how to operate your plant. A centrifuge, a settleometer, a turbinometer, they do have a microscope, a time clock. It's the works. All right, collect samples. Okay, I just had to put this in so I don't overlook it. On time, from the right place, and they have to be representative. Control test samples. You want a sample of mixed liquor, return sludge, and waste sludge. And here we go. And when you collect that sample, don't sit around and dilly-dally. You want to get that right back into the laboratory and into the settleometer. If you horse around too much with a slow settling sludge, you can change the settling characteristics 25 to 30% from what they really were. Get it out of the aerators into the settleometer as soon as possible. Settleometer test. Oh, we already said that. Identify sludge quality, and then we try and talk about how to compute the control demands from that. Here we have Lynn Marshall. See the settleometer? Stirs it up, quiets it down, and in the first 5 minutes, don't wander away from the bench. The first 5 minutes, really observe this sludge. You're going to see a lot of things in there. You're going to see how fast it settles. Is it clear here? What kind of flock? Is it straggler flock? Is it straight compaction? All this 5-minute observation gives you another bunch of useful information. First 5 minutes. You don't have to hang around after the first 5 minutes. Then set your clock and come back when the buzzer rings. Just showing you again what a settleometer looks like. Keep the settling down. Now, especially if you have a bulking sludge. We do this routinely. I think I showed you that one curve. We usually set up one settleometer with 100% sludge, the next one maybe with 75% sludge and 50% effluent, and the next one with about 50% sludge and 50% effluent. Let them both go down. And if you draw your curves, and these two really beat that one, then you can blast waste. If they don't, you're dead. You can't waste. You have to do the opposite again. But you want to run multiple dilution tests to see if you can waste a bulky sludge, which is calling for less waste over the long time period. We do this all. We don't do this for an ordinary sludge. It's a waste of time. All right, sometime the sludge is going to separate and go to the top. It's another little clue. If the sludge goes down here and stays down forever, everybody's happy, they sleep nights, but usually it's possible to give you a better effluent than that. If it pops up like this in less than an hour, you know that if you keep on going that way, finally it's going to pop out of the clarifier. A good sludge or rather I should put it this way. Usually when a sludge settles nicely, relatively slow, stays down from 2 to 4 hours, it's a good sludge. If it stays down forever, it just isn't the kind of sludge you really want. You may have a good effluent, but usually you can get a better one. We always observe the uptime. We just post 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours, 15 minutes or what. Centrifuge tests. Well, now we're going to use a centrifuge to determine mixed liquor return and waste sludge concentrations. Remember, it's important if we get the time, you want to know about your solids distribution between the aerator and the clarifier. It's very important because you can control this and then compute your control demands. Settleometer, well, centrifuge. Here's a sludge. ATC was about 5, RSC was 9.6. Do it in 15 minutes. Incidentally, you put mixed liquor in one, return sludge in another, spin it out. If you're using the international clinical centrifuge, turn it wide open. I think it's a 7 position. Spin it for 5 minutes constantly, and then you have a uniform method of evaluating the concentration of the sludges. And that'll tell you more about it than the balance. Turbidity test. That's a monitoring test, but isn't it nice to be able to see test by test very simply whether you're getting ahead of the game or behind the game. We always include a turbidity test at every test period. First of all, you mix the stuff up, pour it in a vial, see what the turbidity is mixed, leave it settle for an hour, run the turbidity again. If there's any difference, the difference is the clarifier defects. You know, one is ideally what you could do if you had a perfect clarifier. The first one is what you're getting. Sometimes that clues you in to look at your clarifier a little bit more carefully. Nothing more. And any of these kind of turbidimeters give you a repeatable result. Very nice to use. Trend charts. Now, when we got this information, we ought to do something about it. Trend charts. Here we go in our SSV. SSV, settled sludge.